As World War II drew to a close, the Chipley government established the Department of Immigration under Mr. Arthur Caldwell, with a determined policy to lift Australia's population to 20 millions. The scheme prospered with a peak importation of newcomers in 5 years of 152,505. And by the end of 9 years, new Australians, both British and non-British, totaled 900,713. They came by ship and by plane, 70% of them on assisted passages, until on November 15th, 1955, the millionth post-war migrant was welcomed by the then Immigration Minister, Harold Holt. A young Yorkshire bride of 2 weeks, Mrs. Barbara Porritt and her husband Dennis, who joined the Victorian Electricity Commission at Yallourn. They were here to stay, but not this blonde bombshell, Betty Hutton, who blew into Sydney with her husband of 2 weeks, Ian Livingston, to provide one of the salvos in the big-name showbiz bombardment of the capital cities. A kind of delayed honeymoon, she called it, but without the quiet moments for two. Another visitor was Australian-born Judith Anderson to play Medea in the Greek drama Euripides, which launched the Elizabethan Theatre Trust's Australian Drama Company.
I do hope that I will live up to the trust that you have all put in me by bringing me over to my dear country, because America is a long, long way from home, and this is, after all, my home. And I cannot tell you how very, very happy I am to be here with you all. Thank you.
And from the historical to hysterical, the croon prince of pathos, Johnny Ray, made his second trip to the eastern states. Welcomed at Sydney Airport by screaming teenagers, where ladylike dignity went overboard. And Mr. Emotion, at the peak of his crying career, set about igniting another chain reaction of teenage hysteria, with its trail of gasping casualties. Surely a foretaste of Beatlemania to be contracted a decade later. But it took Frank Sinatra to draw the biggest airport crowd of the year. A new Sinatra, now an Academy Award-winning film actor, accompanied by his daughter Nancy.
I'm very pleased to be here in Sydney. And I waited about 5 years to come down and make this trip, and I'm very happy I finally got around to it. And I'm looking forward to a lot of fun. Nancy, would you have something to say?
Well, I don't know. I'm just real excited, and I'm sure it's going to be just wonderful.
Fine. And thank you for welcoming us, Wendy.
And still more stars. Katharine Hepburn and Australian-born Robert Helpman to appear in 3 Shakespearean plays for the Old Vic Company. At Mascot Airport, Bobby met his mother and sister for the first time in 25 years.
It's impossible to say what I feel about coming back to Australia after 25 years. I'm just thrilled to be back and to have the honor to appear with the Old Vic and the great honor to appear with a star like Kate.
Thank you very much. Very exciting to me, too, to be here.
Thank you.
And another local boy who made good, Dick Bentley, star of the BBC Take It From Here series, returned for a brief season on national radio.
Now, I suppose you're wondering exactly why the Wild Colonial Boys returns. Well, I'll tell you a story. Years ago, in the days of sailing ships, they had a race from Australia to England to see who could take the most corn from Australia to England. That race was won by my old grandfather, Bicarbonate Bentley, one of the first settlers, incidentally. So I am carrying on in the same tradition, except that I am bringing the corn back from England to Australia.
1955 was a memorable year in Australian stage history. A new era marked by the opening in Sydney of the Elizabethan Theatre. A glittering capacity first night, eager to see a world-famed cast in Terence Rattigan's Sleeping Prince. Last minute in the dressing rooms. Dame Sybil Thorndike as the Grand Duchess. Her husband, Sir Lewis Casson, already well known to Australian audiences, adds finishing touches. Muriel Forbes cast a critical eye over her makeup, while her husband, Sir Ralph Richardson, dons regal garb for his role as the Regent. To their seats move the Governor, Sir John Northcott, Elizabethan Trust Chairman, Sir James Kirby, Premier Carl. All is ready. A tense first night hush settles as the lights dim the stage comes to life, and live theatre is back in Sydney.
Your Imperial and Royal Highness is probably wondering why I'm still wearing the same dress as last night. The fact is, I had a stupid accident with my latchkey.
What does she say?
She says she had an accident with her latchkey.
Latchkey? Latchkey? Who is Latchkey?
Well, ma'am, it's...
Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm sure he is someone very dull.
A never-to-be-forgotten first night in a year to remember. Another stage was set at Caulfield Racecourse for the International Stakes. Visiting jockeys included the Queen's rider, W.E. Carr, Tiger Wright from South Africa, and leading American reinsman Johnny Adams. Italy's Vittorio Rosa and Jacques Doyersberg from France. Apprentice Jeff Lane was first out on Hugon, but Adams soon took number 9, Brookon, to the front. Carr on number 3, Sir William, was in a handy position, and in the straight, with the crowd studying the different riding styles, Sir William took charge. The American Adams on Brookon, wide out, used the whip vigorously in a desperate attempt, but Sir William won by half a length with Blonde Desilia third. A masterly display by Carr earned the plaudits of the crowd, and there was a well-deserved pat for Sir William from the royal jockey. As usual, on the first Tuesday in November, Melbourne Cup fever reached its peak throughout Australia, with colourful Flemington Racecourse, the stage set for a brilliant fashion parade as a prelude to the 95th running of the famous 2-mile event. Slow motion as they turn into the straight shows the ugly duckling of the field, Topperoa, with the breastplate being challenged by Devonfield. In the straight, Topperoa runs clear, but immediately the favourite, Rising Fast from New Zealand, throws out his challenge. They streak away from the rest of the field and settle down to a battle royal as the gallant Rising Fast bridges the gap inch by inch. But a difference of 34 pounds in weight begins to tell, and Topperoa is able to withstand the challenge and win by 3/4 of a length with Sir William third. It was Neville Selwood's second cup and a tip-top triumph for Topperoa. In this year, Darby Munro handed in his jockey's license to become a trainer after one of the most colourful turf careers of all time. Remember Peter Pan's Melbourne Cup in 1934? Munro was masterly as Peter Pan at 14-1 carried 9 stone 10 to a 6-length victory on a mud patch. The 1944 Melbourne Cup was another highlight. Slow motion shows his punishing style on Sirius in a tight finish. And were the punters appreciative of Demon Darb? One even souvenired his whip. In an amazing saddle career, he won the AJC Derby 10 times. No wonder they called him Darby. Yes, for Demon Darb, the race was over. But it had only just begun for John Hendricks. This blonde speedster with the immaculate style, rocketing to the top of world swimming, was already hot favourite for the 100 metres at the forthcoming Melbourne Olympics. Groomed by coach Harry Gallagher, he perfected the tumble turn, which gave him a split-second advantage, an Olympic record of 55.4 seconds, and the coveted gold medal. Another up-and-coming blonde fish was 16-year-old Murray Rose, who, on a strict vegetarian diet of sunflower seeds and seaweed, was destined to rewrite the record book and collect gold medals at 3 Olympic Games. And it was a real ticker-tape welcome home from America for our Davis Cup team. Ken Rosewall and Lou Hode in the singles, and Lou and Rex Hartwig in the doubles, had regained the trophy at Forest Hills with a smashing 5-0 victory. Sydney's Lord Mayor Hills honoured the boys with a civic reception. But the big question was, will the twins, Lou and Ken, turn pro for £20,000? It was a great relief for Ken Rosewall's parents and his girlfriend Wilma when Ken said this.
I am very happy with my decision, and I will be happy to remain amateur for some time at least. I like playing amateur tennis and look forward to playing at Wimbledon again and helping to defend the Davis Cup for Australia next year.
What a quartet, guided by Mr. Tennis himself, Harry Hopman, a tower of strength. And it needed a tower of strength to withstand the antics of these divers at Sydney's Enfield Pool. How's this for a flying 1.5 with screw? This chap had a screw loose. But have a screw at this back somersault and forward 2.5. And this was the biggest flop of 1955. Not even the drenching rain could dampen the spirits of those two kings of comedy, Jack Davy and Bob Hope, when they visited the Lakes Golf Club in Sydney for a charity match on a bleak midwinter's day.
To be here, and I want to thank Jack Davy for handling all these ceremonies out here. And I was on his show just a few nights ago, and I'm sure that he's big enough to make a comeback. Thank you very, very much.
Back, you fools, back! This may be my only shot of the day. Get it. I faint right after this.
Australian Open champion Ozzie Pickworth got plenty of encouragement from the hopeful Hope.
You've played before.
Bob and Ozzie were matched against Norman von Nyder and Harry Berwick. But after sloshing through 6 holes, the comedy capers came to an end, and Bob Hope found use for one of those ballpoint pens which writes underwater. Sydney Stadium, and British Empire welterweight champion George Barnes lays his title on the line against West African Atu Clotty. The dusky visitor had never been knocked down in 60 fights. Barnes attacked from the start, scoring well with a body barrage. A nervous Clotty continually back-moved with clever footwork, keeping him out of trouble. The champion built up an early points lead by taking the fight to the challenger, but occasionally Clotty got through with dangerous right-hand counters. West African moved in, but missed with both hands as Barnes bobbed and weaved. Late in the bout, Clotty changed from defense to attack to make up some of the leeway. It was all Clotty in the last stages as he strove desperately for a knockout and the welter crown. But the durable Barnes was able to stay the distance, gain a close points verdict, and retain the championship belt. And to put some punch into the National Fitness Campaign, these curvaceous members of a Melbourne physical culture class engaged in the Battle of the Bulge. Any dumbbell knows you can't be a cute number without a good figure, so they jumped to it on pogo sticks, bouncing along the bumpy road to beauty with their motto, a good figure or bust. It was great for their souls, but tough on their heels, not nearly as glamorous or comfortable as this feast of feminine footwear which came to Sydney with Edward Raine, shoemaker for Queen Elizabeth. A cobbler's collection of 100 styles with the emphasis on grace and glamour. Studded with jewels, it was called The Case of the Disappearing Heel, a real thriller. The Cinderella Slipper, 1955 model. Matching shoe and handbag in flower-patterned leather, showing for the first time in Australia. A star-studded collection with each creation truly fit for a queen. It was a proud day, far removed from politics, for the Prime Minister when he escorted his daughter, Heather Menzies, into St Andrew's Presbyterian Church, Canberra, for her marriage to Mr Peter Henderson. 400 guests, including members of the diplomatic corps, packed the picturesque church, while more than 3,000 gathered outside for a glimpse of the federal capital's wedding of the year. Now we move north to the New England University at Armidale for the installation of Sir Earl Page as the first Chancellor. Dignitaries came from all over the country, headed by Australia's 13th Governor-General, Sir William Slim, who was greeted by more than 4,000 New England schoolchildren. Universities in Britain, Canada, India, Pakistan, South Africa and New Zealand were represented at the colourful cap and gown ceremony. The Deputy Prime Minister, Sir Arthur Fadden, represented the Commonwealth Government. The actual investiture was performed by the new university's Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Matchwick, a fitting role for the Grafton-born federal member for Cowper since 1919, who was Prime Minister for 19 days and leader of the Country Party for more than 20 years. There's reputed to be a field marshal's baton in every young soldier's knapsack, these men of the 2nd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment were worrying more about self-preservation than promotion. On a compact 6-week course at the heartbreaking Canungra Jungle Training School in South Queensland's rainforests, they were being toughened up for service in Malaya against communist marauders. No place this for the timid or the weak. The Army's most severe testing ground, designed to produce soldiers fully equipped in body and mind to combat the menace of man and nature in the fetid jungle, where keenness of ear and eye and swiftness of trigger can mean the difference between life and death. Canungra, a modern fighter factory. It was in an atmosphere of war in the Middle East and New Guinea that William Dargie made his name as an official artist. But here in King's Hall, Parliament House, Canberra, Dr. Evatt is with the artist for the unveiling of his portrait in oils of Her Majesty the Queen. Dargie was commissioned by the late J.P. Beveridge of Melbourne to do the portrait, which was later displayed in the art galleries of every state before returning to its place of honour in Parliament House. Since 1791, about 350 shark attacks have been recorded in Australian waters. Over those years, fewer than 100 lives have been lost, but there remains the ever-present menace of a shark attack. Lifesavers continually are on the alert to warn the bathers. Most dangerous areas are around Sydney and Newcastle in New South Wales and Townsville and Cairns on the Queensland coast. But the records show only sporadic attacks in other states. Tasmania has never had a fatal shark attack. In February 1955, 2 lives were lost in Sydney Harbour. 13-year-old John Willis died at Balmoral, and 25-years-old Bruno Rautenberg ignored warnings from friends and was taken at Sugarloaf Bay in Middle Harbour. Philanthropist Sir Edward Holstrom offered $2,000 to the person who caught the killer. An extraordinary shark fleet assembled. The hunt was on. Several monsters were hooked, but no one claimed the reward. But at least the ranks of the man-eaters were thinned. A few days after this unique shark hunting fleet dispersed, the Navy said farewell to one of its most famous fighting ships, the 10,000-ton, 8-inch gunned cruiser Australia. Launched in 1927, she had served her country valiantly as flagship of the Australian squadron in World War II. But, battle-scarred and obsolete, her job was done. It was indeed a sad day, not only for her crew, but for every Australian, when the old fighter was towed out through Sydney Heads, bound for an English scrapyard. A telling reminder of the drastic post-war changes in the technique of naval warfare, and the rise of the submarine, the frigate, and the destroyer. And it was to develop this new technique that units of the British and Australian navies joined in anti-submarine exercises off Jervis Bay in May 1955 to test the latest weapons and equipment under battle conditions. The commander of the Royal Navy sub Thurah catches first sight of his quarry. The alarm is given for a crash dive. And down she goes. Underwater, she levels up to stalk her prey. The skipper, with his keen eye, lines up the quarry, but the surface fleet has been alerted, and the game of hide and seek is on. The destroyer Tobruk becomes a nerve center in the hunt for the submarine. The captain passes control of the ship to the Aztec room, where echo sounding equipment pinpoints the position of the sub 300 feet below. It's time to move in for the kill. Batteries of squid depth charges are fired. Mammoth planes on Vengeance and Sydney prepare to add their punch to the attack. Assessors recorded a victory for the ships and aircraft, but this was one occasion when a sunken submarine lived to fight another day. Water, water everywhere. And in February, the heavens opened over the whole of New South Wales, releasing a deluge rarely equaled in intensity. Gale force winds lashed the coastal districts from Eden to Tweed Heads. Mother Nature was in one of her ugliest moods. Inevitably, the many rivers rose and flood time was back again. Maitland was once more the victim of the swirling, raging waters as the Hunter River broke its banks. On February 24th, the surging wall hit Maitland and late that night reached 36 feet, only 6 inches below the all-time record set in 1949. Men, women and children worked desperately but in vain to build sandbag ramparts. But the odds were hopeless. Within 24 hours, 15,000 people of the Maitland district were homeless. With heavy rains continuing, the position became critical as the bridge at Maitland was completely covered. The force of thousands of tons of water in the upper reaches of the valley came tumbling down, bringing with it a mass of debris. Every living thing had but one thought, to climb above this swirling death. Instinctive enemies were forgotten. The lowly frog and lizard shared common peril. But hours of labor went undone in seconds as the levees broke through. There was nothing for it but to get out. Entire families and a few possessions, bewildered children and willing helpers risking their own lives to aid their escape. In 6 days, the floodwaters caused damage estimated at more than $4 million. 24 lives were lost, 19 were drowned and 5 electrocuted. When the floodwaters eventually subsided, more than 30 people were missing, and it was more than a week before they were accounted for. Roadways became waterways. The main street, a scene of terror and destruction that had to be experienced to be believed. A scene of loss and human misery that was repeated in every town and village throughout the stricken areas. Government and private resources throughout the land combined to relieve the thousands of homeless refugees who had fled to higher ground. Blankets, clothing and food. Urgent medicines to ward off another dreaded danger even greater than the flood, the threat of disease. For all local services were hopelessly ineffective. Cameraman Sid Wood and Mark MacDonald recorded these dramatic and graphic pictures at great personal risk. As skiffs, army ducks and surf boats were brought in to join in the mammoth rescue effort, police, soldiers and surf club members risked their lives in the raging torrent. This young fellow was lucky, but many were not. A number of men sought refuge from the floodwaters in a railway signal box, but it proved a death trap. A Navy helicopter was called and 2 men clung to the rescue hook. One swung onto high-tension wires and died instantly. The second disappeared into the swirling waters. The helicopter also hit the wires and crashed. Army ducks miraculously rescued the crew. When nature lets loose with frightening forces, man is helpless. As so pungently emphasized in the Maitland floods of 1955. A year to remember.